Carter woke up to the kind of morning that usually only exists in commercials for orange juice. The sun was shining, birds were chirping, probably plotting to steal breadcrumbs, but still, and his coffee smelled like victory. Then his phone buzzed. "Dude, is everything okay? I just saw your house listed on Zillow for like half its value." The text from Alex read. Alex, his best friend, had a knack for stating the obvious, possibly because he worked as a private investigator and dealt with people who couldn't find their own feet in broad daylight. Carter choked on his coffee. "What? I didn't list my house." He scrambled for his laptop, his morning zen vanishing faster than free donuts at a police convention. He typed in his address, and there it was. His charming, meticulously maintained bungalow, complete with a ridiculously flattering filter, being advertised as a fixer-upper with endless potential. Potential for what, exactly? Becoming a haven for termites? The listing agent's name stared back at him. Karen Reynolds. Now, the name Karen has become synonymous with a certain breed of entitled, pearl-clutching, coupon-wielding individuals who believe the world revolves around their meticulously coiffed hairdos. And Karen Reynolds, president of the local homeowners association, HOA, was the Karen to end all Karens. "Oh, this is just rich," Carter muttered. He knew exactly what was going on. See, Karen had been eyeing his property for months. The HOA, in their infinite wisdom, had decided that the community desperately needed a clubhouse. Never mind that there was already a perfectly good community center 5 blocks away. No, this community needed a clubhouse, and Carter's perfectly manicured lawn was the perfect spot for it. Carter had politely but firmly declined. He enjoyed his privacy, his garden, and the satisfaction of not having to listen to Mrs. Henderson's weekly karaoke night. This refusal apparently was a declaration of war. HOA redevelopment project. The listing blared. Prime location, motivated seller. Motivated seller? He was motivated to sue the pants off whoever put this listing up. He marched over to the HOA office. A small, sterile room that smelled suspiciously of lemon-scented cleaning products and simmering resentment. Karen sat behind her desk, a throne of paperwork and passive-aggressive sticky notes, looking smugger than a cat who just swallowed a canary. "Karen," Carter said, his voice dangerously calm. "Care to explain why my house is being sold without my permission?" Karen looked up, feigning surprise. "Oh, Carter, I was just about to call you. You see, the HOA has approved a redevelopment project for the neighborhood. Your property, unfortunately, falls within the designated area. It's for the greater good, you know? The greater good of your real estate portfolio may be," Carter retorted. "I haven't agreed to anything. This is illegal." Karen waved a dismissive hand, the multiple rings on her fingers glinting under the fluorescent lights. "Oh, don't be dramatic, Carter. The HOA has the right to eminent domain. We're offering you a fair price." Fair price? The listed price wouldn't even cover the cost of his custom-built tiki bar in the backyard. Carter's legal brain kicked into overdrive. Eminent domain? Maybe, but not without due process, fair compensation, and a mountain of paperwork that Karen clearly hadn't bothered with. He was a real estate lawyer, for crying out loud. He knew the law inside and out, and Karen had just stepped into a legal hornet's nest. "Karen," he said, a smile creeping across his face, "you've made a big mistake. You see, I happen to know a thing or two about real estate law, and I can assure you, this isn't going to end well for you." He turned to leave, but paused at the door. "Oh, and Karen, I hope you enjoy your new clubhouse, because it's going to be built on the foundation of your ruined reputation." As he walked out, he knew this was more than just a property dispute. This was war, and Carter, armed with his legal knowledge and a healthy dose of righteous indignation, was ready to fight. He couldn't wait to turn the tables on Karen, exposing her for the manipulative, power-hungry busybody she really was. But as he drove home, a nagging thought crossed his mind. How did Karen think she could get away with this? She wasn't stupid, just misguidedly ambitious. Someone must be pulling the strings. That's when he remembered Victor Langley. Langley was a local real estate tycoon with a reputation for shady dealings and a bank account that could make Scrooge McDuck jealous. Langley had been sniffing around the neighborhood for months, trying to buy up properties for a new development. Could Karen be working with Langley? It seemed unlikely, but the more he thought about it, the more it made sense. Langley had the money, the connections, and the ruthlessness to pull something like this off. And Karen, with her inflated ego and desperate need for validation, would be the perfect pawn. Carter knew he needed more information. That's when he decided to call Alex, his private investigator friend. Alex might be a bit of a goofball, but he was also a master of disguise, a whiz with technology, and had a knack for uncovering secrets that people desperately wanted to keep hidden. "Alex," Carter said into his phone, "I need your help. I think I've stumbled onto something big, and it involves Karen, a shady real estate developer, and a whole lot of illegal activity." "Illegal activity, you say?" Alex replied, his voice suddenly serious. "Sounds like my kind of party. Tell me everything." As Carter recounted the events of the morning, he could feel a sense of excitement building inside him. He was a lawyer, yes, but he also had a thirst for justice. And the thought of taking down Karen and Langley, exposing their greed and corruption, filled him with a sense of purpose. The next morning, Alex arrived at Carter's doorstep, looking like he'd raided a thrift store's slightly used detective section. He sported a trench coat that was definitely older than Carter, a fedora that was 2 sizes too small, and a pair of comically oversized sunglasses. "Ready to Sherlock Holmes this situation, buddy?" Alex declared, striking a dramatic pose. Carter chuckled. "Just try not to attract too much attention. We're trying to be discreet. Remember? Discreet? My dear Carter, discretion is my middle name. It's actually Bartholomew, but who's counting?" Their first stop, Karen's office. While Carter distracted Karen with a barrage of legal questions and veiled threats, all perfectly within the bounds of professional conduct, of course, Alex snuck around back, armed with lockpicks and an unhealthy amount of caffeine. The office, as suspected, was a shrine to Karen's ego. Framed certificates from HOA management seminars lined the walls, alongside photos of Karen shaking hands with various local politicians, all of whom looked like they regretted their life choices. Alex bypassed the alarm system with surprising ease. Turns out, Karen's security system was powered by a $10 Radio Shack kit, and began his search. He rummaged through files, scanned documents, and generally made a mess, all while humming the theme song from Mission Impossible. "Bingo," Alex whispered into his comm. "I found some interesting stuff here, Carter. Looks like Karen's been skimming money from the HOA budget. Landscaping fees, community outreach programs, all suspiciously vague and incredibly expensive." "Keep digging," Carter instructed, barely maintaining a polite facade as Karen droned on about the importance of matching window treatments in the neighborhood. "See if you can find anything linking her to Langley." It wasn't long before Alex hit the jackpot. Hidden in a locked drawer, which Alex promptly unlocked with a paperclip and a well-placed curse word, was a folder labeled Project Paradise. Inside, Carter found a series of documents outlining Langley's plans for the neighborhood, including blueprints for a luxury condo complex and a detailed timeline for evicting the current residents. "We've got her, Carter," Alex said triumphantly. "This is the smoking gun. Karen and Langley are definitely in cahoots." But the real kicker was a handwritten note attached to one of the documents. It read, "Remember, the Deputy Cole is on our payroll. He'll make sure any complications disappear." "Deputy Cole?" Carter exclaimed. "That corrupt buffoon? I should have known." Deputy Cole was notorious for turning a blind eye to local crime, usually in exchange for free donuts and the occasional bribe. The fact that he was involved meant this conspiracy went deeper than Carter had initially thought. With the evidence secured, Carter and Alex made their escape, leaving Karen none the wiser. As they drove away, Carter couldn't help but feel a surge of satisfaction. Karen had thought she was playing him, but she was the one who was about to get played. Their next step was to talk to the other residents of the neighborhood. Carter knew that Karen had been targeting more than just his property. He needed to find the other victims the people who had been bullied, intimidated, or outright swindled by Karen's scheme. It didn't take long to find them. Mrs. Henderson, the karaoke enthusiast, had been pressured into selling her house for a fraction of its value after Karen threatened to report her for excessive noise violations. Mr. Peterson, the elderly widower, had been tricked into signing a confusing legal document that effectively gave the HOA control of his property. Each story was more infuriating than the last. Karen had preyed on the vulnerable, exploited their trust, and lined her own pockets in the process. Carter felt a burning desire to make her pay, to expose her for the monster she truly was. "All right, Alex," Carter said, his voice steely. "It's time to turn the screws on Karen and Langley. I want you to dig up everything you can on them. Their finances, their personal lives, their deepest, darkest secrets. I want to know everything." "You got it, boss," Alex replied, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "This is going to be fun." Over the next few days, Alex worked tirelessly, using his network of contacts and his uncanny ability to find dirt on anyone. He discovered that Karen had a gambling addiction, a mountain of debt, and a secret love affair with the local pool boy. Langley, meanwhile, had a history of shady business dealings, tax evasion, and a penchant for hiring lawyers who were suspiciously good at making problems disappear. Armed with this new information, Carter began to formulate his plan. He knew he couldn't just confront Karen and Langley directly. He needed to be strategic, to methodical, to expose their crimes in a way that would leave them no room to deny or escape. He decided to call a neighborhood meeting, ostensibly to discuss the HOA's proposed redevelopment project. But in reality, it was a trap. A carefully orchestrated ambush that would reveal Karen and Langley's true colors to the entire community. As he prepared for the meeting, Carter couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. He had the evidence, he had the allies, and he had the burning desire for revenge. Karen and Langley had messed with the wrong lawyer, and they were about to learn a very painful lesson. But as he reviewed his plan, Carter couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. He had all the pieces of the puzzle, but they didn't quite fit. There was something about Karen and Langley's scheme that didn't make sense. That's when it hit him. Karen and Langley were greedy, yes, but they weren't stupid. They wouldn't risk their reputations and their freedom for a few extra dollars. Someone else was pulling the strings, someone with even more power and influence. And Carter knew that if he wanted to truly expose the truth, he would have to find out who that person was. The night of the HOA meeting arrived like a particularly ominous Tuesday. The community center was packed, a testament to both the neighborhood's boredom and the simmering resentment toward Karen. The air hung thick with anticipation, like a bad sitcom about to jump the shark. Karen, perched on the stage like a queen surveying her kingdom of mismatched lawn ornaments, beamed a plastic smile. Langley lurked in the back, looking like a Bond villain who'd misplaced his cat. Deputy Cole, predictably, was leaning against a wall, enjoying a donut that looked suspiciously like it had been paid for with HOA funds. "Good evening, everyone," Karen chirped, her voice dripping with fake sincerity. "I'm so glad to see so many of you here tonight to discuss our exciting redevelopment project." A few polite coughs rippled through the crowd. Carter, sitting near the front with Alex by his side, smirked. Exciting? More like terrifying. Karen launched into her presentation, a PowerPoint slideshow filled with buzzwords like synergy, optimization, and community enhancement. The slides were accompanied by stock photos of smiling families who looked suspiciously like they'd been photoshopped into the neighborhood. "As you can see," Karen continued, "this project will bring tremendous benefits to our community. Increased property values, state-of-the-art amenities, and a vibrant new social scene. What about the people who are being forced out of their homes?" Mrs. Henderson shouted from the back, her voice laced with anger. Karen blinked, momentarily thrown off her game. "Now, Mrs. Henderson, let's not be negative. We're offering fair compensation to everyone affected by the project." "Fair compensation?" Mr. Peterson chimed in, his voice trembling. "You offered me a pittance for my home. I've lived there for 50 years. The crowd began to murmur, their frustration reaching a boiling point. Karen, realizing she was losing control, turned to Langley for support. He just shrugged, his eyes glinting with cold calculation. "Order! Order!" Karen screeched, banging her gavel with excessive force. "We will not tolerate these disruptions." That's when Carter stood up, a calm smile on his face. "Actually, Karen, I think these disruptions are perfectly justified. In fact, I believe the residents of this community deserve to know the truth about your so-called redevelopment project." Karen's face turned a shade of red usually reserved for stop signs. "What are you talking about, Carter? This is a legitimate HOA initiative. Is it, Karen?" Carter replied, pulling out a flash drive. "Because I have a little presentation of my own." He strode to the projector and plugged in the flash drive. The screen flickered, and a title slide appeared, "The Truth About Project Paradise." A presentation by Carter, Esquire. The crowd gasped. Karen's eyes widened in horror. Langley's face remained impassive, but Carter could see a flicker of concern in his eyes. Even Deputy Cole seemed to be paying attention, his donut momentarily forgotten. Carter clicked to the next slide, which displayed a detailed breakdown of the HOA's finances. "As you can see," he explained, "a significant amount of money has been diverted from the community budget to questionable expenses. Landscaping fees that are 10 times the going rate, community outreach programs that seem to consist entirely of lavish dinners for Karen and her friends, and a rather suspicious consulting fee paid to a certain Victor Langley." The crowd murmured in disbelief. Karen sputtered, trying to interrupt, but Carter pressed on. He displayed the documents Alex had found in Karen's office, the blueprints for Langley's luxury condo complex, the timeline for evicting the residents, and the handwritten note mentioning Deputy Cole's involvement. "This," Carter declared, "is a conspiracy. Karen Reynolds and Victor Langley have been working together to defraud the residents of this community, lining their own pockets at our expense." The crowd erupted in outrage. Mrs. Henderson started singing a karaoke version of "We're Not Gonna Take It," and surprisingly, the whole room joined in. Mr. Peterson, emboldened by the crowd's support, confronted Karen and demanded his house back. Karen, her face a mask of fury and desperation, tried to deny the evidence, but it was too late. The truth was out, and the community was not happy. "This is ridiculous," she shrieked. "These documents are forgeries. Carter is trying to sabotage the project." That's when Carter played his trump card. "Oh, Karen, I was wondering when you'd say that. That's why I have one more piece of evidence to present." He clicked to the final slide, which displayed a video recording. It showed Karen and Langley sitting in a dimly lit restaurant, discussing their plans in detail. Karen could be heard bragging about how they were going to milk these suckers dry, and Langley was outlining his strategy for bribing Deputy Cole. The video was damning, irrefutable, and utterly hilarious. Karen's voice sounded like a cartoon villain, and Langley looked like he was auditioning for a role in a mob movie. The crowd went wild. Karen's carefully constructed facade crumbled, revealing the greedy, manipulative person beneath. She was utterly exposed, her reputation in ruins. Langley, realizing the jig was up, tried to slip out the back door, but Alex, ever vigilant, blocked his path. Deputy Cole, suddenly realizing he was about to become the fall guy, tried to arrest Carter, but the crowd surrounded him, chanting, "Shame! Shame!" In the end, Karen and Langley were left standing on the stage, humiliated and defeated. Their scheme had been exposed, their reputations destroyed, and their plans in tatters. As Carter watched the chaos unfold, he couldn't help but feel a surge of satisfaction. He had done it. He had taken down Karen and Langley, exposed their corruption, and brought justice to his community. And maybe, just maybe, he could finally get some peace and quiet in his perfectly manicured backyard. After all, a lawyer deserves a good tiki drink after a hard day's work. The karaoke, however, would have to wait. There were still villains to vanquish and HOA meetings to disrupt. The saga continues. The aftermath of the HOA meeting was glorious, like a parade celebrating the end of a particularly oppressive dictatorship. Karen Reynolds became a pariah. People crossed the street to avoid her, HOA meetings were suspiciously well attended, out of morbid curiosity, and her meticulously maintained lawn was vandalized with what could only be described as artistic expressions of civic disapproval. Victor Langley, meanwhile, vanished into the shadows, presumably counting his ill-gotten gains and plotting his next dubious venture. Deputy Cole was placed on administrative leave, pending an investigation that everyone knew would conveniently disappear after a few well-placed bribes and a strongly worded letter from Langley's lawyers. Carter, however, wasn't content to let them off the hook so easily. He filed a lawsuit against Karen and Langley, seeking damages for fraud, conspiracy, and emotional distress. The Tiki Bar had been deeply traumatized by the whole ordeal. The trial was a circus. Karen, represented by a lawyer who looked like he'd lost a bet with a used car salesman, tried to argue that she was merely misguided and that Carter was a vindictive bully. Langley, appearing via video link from his lavishly decorated prison cell, apparently tax evasion was a gateway crime, claimed he was just an innocent bystander who got caught up in Karen's overzealousness. The jury, however, wasn't buying it. After deliberating for what felt like 5 minutes, they returned a verdict in favor of Carter and the other residents. Karen and Langley were ordered to pay a hefty sum in damages, and the redevelopment project was officially dead in the water. The community rejoiced. Mrs. Henderson threw a karaoke party that lasted for 3 days straight. Mr. Peterson got his house back, complete with a newly installed security system, and Carter became the undisputed hero of the neighborhood. He even received a plaque from the grateful residents, which he promptly hung next to his law degree. Justice has been served, Carter declared to Alex over a celebratory pizza. Karen and Langley are finally getting what they deserve. Don't count your chickens just yet, buddy, Alex cautioned, stuffing his face with pepperoni. I still think there's more to this story. Langley doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who acts alone. Someone's been pulling his strings. Carter had to admit Alex had a point. Langley, despite his wealth and power, always seemed like a puppet, a pawn in someone else's game. And if that was the case, who was the puppeteer? That's when Karen, in a desperate attempt to salvage what little remained of her reputation, decided to spill the beans. In a tearful interview with the local news, she revealed that Langley had been working for a powerful figure in the state government, a shadowy individual known only as Mr. Big. Mr. Big, according to Karen, had been the mastermind behind the redevelopment project, the one who had orchestrated the entire scheme and promised Langley a fortune in exchange for his cooperation. Karen claimed she had never met Mr. Big personally, but she had heard whispers about his power and influence, his ability to make problems disappear with a phone call. Carter knew he had to find out who Mr. Big was. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about exposing a network of corruption that reached the highest levels of government. He enlisted Alex's help once again, and together, they began to dig deeper. They scoured Langley's financial records, interviewed his associates, and even managed to hack into his encrypted emails. What they found was chilling. Mr. Big was indeed a powerful figure, a state senator with a reputation for being a squeaky clean reformer. He had been using his influence to push through legislation that would benefit Langley's real estate empire, and in exchange, Langley had been funneling money into the senator's campaign coffers. Carter knew he had to expose Mr. Big, but he also knew that it wouldn't be easy. The senator had powerful allies, and he wouldn't hesitate to use his resources to silence anyone who threatened him. As Carter prepared to go public with his findings, he received a phone call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was smooth, menacing, and utterly devoid of emotion. "Mr. Carter," the voice said, "I suggest you drop this investigation. You're playing with fire, and you're going to get burned." Carter laughed, a cold, defiant sound. "Is that a threat, Mr. Big?" "It's a warning," the voice replied. "Consider it a friendly piece of advice. Walk away, and no one gets hurt." "Sorry to disappoint you," Carter said, "but I don't take advice from criminals. I'm a lawyer, and I'm going to expose you, no matter what it takes." The voice chuckled, a chilling, unsettling sound. "You're a brave man, Mr. Carter, but bravery won't save you. This is your last chance. Walk away or face the consequences." The line went dead. Carter stared at his phone, his heart pounding. He knew he was in danger, but he couldn't back down now. He had come too far, and he was too close to the truth. "Well, Alex," Carter said, his voice grim, "looks like we're about to go to war with a state senator. This is going to be fun." As Carter geared up for the fight of his life, he couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. He had taken down Karen and Langley, but Mr. Big was a different beast altogether. He was powerful, ruthless, and seemingly untouchable. But Carter was determined to bring him down, no matter the cost. He had a community to protect, a reputation to uphold, and a burning desire for justice. And he wasn't about to let a corrupt politician stand in his way. After credits scene, the camera pans to a dimly lit office, where a figure sits silhouetted against a window overlooking the city. The figure picks up a phone. "Did you take care of Carter?" the figure asks. "Not yet, Senator," a voice replies. "He's proving to be more difficult than we anticipated." The senator sighs. "I'm growing impatient. I want this taken care of permanently. Do whatever it takes. And make sure there are no loose ends." The figure hangs up the phone and turns to face the camera. It's Deputy Cole, looking even more corrupt and menacing than before. He smiles, a cruel, predatory grin. "Don't worry, Senator," he says. "I'll make sure Carter gets the message, loud and clear."